maybe Q is some type of part of a call to action. So I decided, okay, I'm going to get back in. If people want to go up against the dragon, then count me in. So I made it a goal at that time. I had a little bit of Bitcoin money, and I worked every day just making videos. And every morning I would ask the creator of the universe, please put me on this path to help all the other people take on the farmers of this place and the slave masters and the dragon, and let's do it, you know?
Yeah.
And and then within a few months, it's a cool story, but a bunch of serendipitous events happened. I was able to get the number for Rob Dew at Infowars because I did an ad that they wanted to run. Once I had his number, I moved there to Texas and kind of called him up, put him on the spot, and I was like, "Hey, remember me? I want a job. You know, I moved here."
Yeah.
And then he invited me to lunch, hired me to do other things, not really as a reporter. The reporting was just something like an aside thing if you can do any reports on the side. But I was given total freedom to do it, and then ended up just doing that alone as the reports. But basically, that's what got me into it was this idea of Q. And then 2020 came along, and soon as they said we're shutting things down, and it was immediate. It was within an instant of a second. I was like, oh, they got me. You know, they
Yeah.
got me again. And I still think it's really funny how they got me because they actually got me back into it. Like I was already like, whatever, guys, you know, you win. And for me, it got me into it. But now I see what's happening because and I remember for a while, I was like, well, they are telling a lot of truths. Like they're telling all the pedophilia, the real heinous shit they're talking about. But now I can see why they were doing it. It was the same reason why they were putting trannies in everywhere to get
Yeah.
everyone's attention with trannies is because, and the same reason they're doing all the scare pedophilia stuff, pedophilia, is because how are you going to stop that? Like, I come from a Catholic school, and I remember back in the day when thousands and thousands of Catholic priests were outed all over the country for thousands and thousands of rapes that still to this day, many Catholics just blow it off and ignore it all or something. You know, shit happens behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Families, most pedophilia experiences come in the family by their own parents, you know. So how are you going to save those kids? And there's only one answer, and that's, like mass surveillance. Like everyone needs a digital ID, it's like just like in 1984 almost, cameras in your house even, because we can't trust you. What are you going to do? You could hurt the kids,
Yeah.
And so that seems very clear to me because this movement has become huge. It's become pop culture. And it's almost all based on that. It's all based on saving the children. It's all based on these pedophile adrenochrome cults. And the story is kind of bullshit too. Like there's a lot of red flags that I caught. The story that it basically started with JFK. That's kind of that's kind of what they're saying. I think
Mhm.
they maybe get into the Federal Reserve Bank a little bit, but who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, it's anybody's guess. And to your point too, like when we see like these online de-anonymizing bills coming through, like I think there's one in Australia that's called like Save the Kids Act or Kids Online Safety Act or something like that.
Hmm.
And that's what they're kind of
Yeah.
using to like, hey, we're gonna make it to where you can't hide behind a pseudonym or some sort of like random account name. You're gonna have it registered to you, and everything that you say online is going to be basically like you're saying it under oath or something like that. And it's kind of crazy to see that they're able to successfully use that, even though half of the people that are pushing for those things are probably involved in some of those rings, like the pedophilia rings, or on the Epstein list or something like that. I don't want to name any specific names, but it's kind of crazy to see that it's working.
It is crazy to see that it's working. Yeah.
Um,
Every everything kind of changed for me in 2020. Like
yeah.
before 2020, I would have never thought it would work. And then when I saw the people putting the masks on and fighting each other, then I did not know that that was um, the case. And what's really interesting is like, so that means it's us. That means there's something wrong with us. And what's interesting was I got to visit Russia for 6 months, and I was not there during COVID, but I
Mhm.
did talk to everyone I knew over there about what was it like in COVID. And so there's only anecdotal information, but basically what I've heard and what I've seemed to verify in my own research is that it only lasted a couple of weeks there, and then the government gave up. And from what I heard, it's because there was no like uh, left versus right in the population. The people were all on the same side. The police were on the side of the people. employers were faking, lying on the document saying, yeah, they got the vaccine. Doctors were lying for their patients. Yeah, they got the vaccine. Everyone had each other's back, and the government sussed that out pretty quick. And they're like, all right, screw it, we can't do anything. So then they shut down even trying.
Yeah.
But they were pushing, like the evidence does show that they were pushing mRNA garbage. But the difference is that the people were like, F you. And I think that that's probably because most people alive in Russia have lost family members from the government murdering them. And so they know that the government will murder you. Whereas the Americans are just completely dumbed down to the point where we think our government is like Mickey Mouse
Yeah.
or something, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because I know people personally that have gotten the vaccine, and I was, just kind of like looking back in retrospect, it's like, you never know what they're, they put chemicals in the water and additives, preservatives in the food, but it seems like there's something a little more intimate about like just shoving some random batch of chemicals like in your body intravenously. And looking at like the mRNA stuff and the transhumanism stuff, even going back as far as like the eugenics programs with the Rockefellers and stuff, and seeing that they kind of laid the groundwork for like the United Nations, the WHO, the National Institutes of Health, like all these same things. Fauci was, tied up with the AIDS scandal or whatever from the 80s. So it seems a little bit like we're almost kind of repeating like Ronald Reagan's term a little bit with Trump.
Well, I think this is the big one. I think this was a big deal. I think I even heard someone say, I think it was Derek Bros, I think is his name. I just started following him on Twitter. He's got a lot of cool stuff to say, but I think he just said something like that he thinks the whole term Trump card was actually thought out part of the whole thing, and I
Oh
would not be
wow.
surprised. Like that doesn't because you got books going back about 100 years, all within the Federal Reserve banking system timeline, which I think is important to note.
Mhm.
And what he's about to do is he's about to, in my opinion, like I said, like I'm at the point for the first time in maybe forever where I feel confident that I know what's coming.
Mhm.
Because I think they've got a full, clear path to the finish line right now. So, it seems clear to me. But I think what Trump's about to do is introduce the crypto AI world system. And by doing so, he's going to, according to the history books, bring world peace. Because, as we know from World War I and World War II, you can easily tie economic crashes to those wars. And that's really America's only way out when our dollar crashes is war and stuff like that. And so he's going to offer another way out, a way that where everyone can get rich. And I believe he'll be able to pay off the deficit. And I believe that with the crypto, you'll be able to have universal basic income. And when I think they're going to do it in a way where they're going to probably crash the dollar, which will be very easy to do, and they'll probably let people sweat it out just long enough. They probably have all the numbers crunched to know how long to do that. Let people panic because they're broke. And then, right when it at the right time comes in, then Trump can come in and with this miraculous plan, and they can give you dollar for dollar the USD token, whatever it is. It'll be a stable coin. It won't be
Yeah.
a central bank digital currency, and then there'll be a carbon tax attached to it, and everyone will cheer and celebrate and say hurrah. And if you
Yeah.
try arguing about it, then people will just be like, "What's wrong with you?"
Yeah. Yeah, I'm kind of seeing that same thing, and especially when you even try to criticize anything that Trump's doing, like this whole talk about like annexation of Greenland and the tariffs that he's putting on all these countries and stuff, and people will say, "Oh, what were you would we have been any better under Kamala?" and shit like that. And I'm like, Kamala was never gonna win. In my opinion, like I think that they wanted to have a candidate so unpalatable, which they tried to make Joe Biden, and then he dropped out, and so they put her in, and it's like, well, they wanted someone so bad that the masses would just go, flock to Trump and make him
Yeah, I think that
overwhelmingly
was
popular.
obvious. By the
Yeah.
time like Biden was like shitting his pants and like and the masks where it's like they don't have to make it look like there's three people. I mean, they were deliberately the fake White House. It became pretty clear that they were obviously coming with some heavy shit that was going to be like, what? And that's kind of what Greenland and Canada was to me, especially Canada. I'm like, Canada, really?
Yeah.
Like, wasn't expecting that one. And what's really amazing is just how quickly all the Trump supporters just grabbed it. Be like, what are you talking about? That's a great idea, you know? And if you criticize in any way, and I don't even criticize, I just do. To be fair, I think a lot of my videos are very unbiased. I try to be
Yeah.
very. I'm showing this is what's happening, and um, and if I do that with Trump, people would be like, he's trolling, which is my favorite thing. Like he's like if the politician says something crazy, then he's just trolling. He's
Yeah.
just joking.
Yeah, and it's you know, going back to the Q movement thing, it's like something will happen that's like an actual agreement, or you know, like when Trump met with Netanyahu, and they'll say, "Oh, but did you see Netanyahu's face?" And analyze his face. It looks like he was not expecting this, or Trump
Yeah.
said something, and it's all these. Well, he's actually
There might be
fighting
some
for
truth
us.
to that too, actually. I wouldn't be surprised if Israel gets scrapped and Netanyahu gets hung out to dry. You know, I wouldn't be surprised at all. After their purpose is served, which I think it's clear that the whole Zionist purpose is to take control of the middle, is to secure all that land. If I were to guess, it'll probably be, you know, there'll be war crimes against Israel for what they did, and the way they'll make up for it is they'll build like a big universal one world religion church there so that all three religions can go into one big church that has Muhammad, Jesus, and all that together or whatever, something like that. You know, the Vatican's already been talking about doing this. The Vatican, you know, the Pope's getting all ready to be the one to do it and put it all together in a world peace. And that's what part of what I think Trump's going to do. I think the bulldozing of Gaza and building that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
As crazy as it sounds, and I think it will be written in the history books that now there's world peace in the Middle East, and you know, and everything's fixed, and we got this, you know, we got this money that now works, and we can print as much as we want, basically, and there's just one, and the only drawbacks will be no more privacy.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And two, like with the stuff in the headlines right now with Iran, you know, that's always been, as far as I can remember, at least for the past 100+ years or so, has been like the signifying of like the starting of World War III and the sign of the end times. Do you think that like we're gonna go to war with Iran? Do you think they're gonna stage some sort of like apocalyptic event so that they can burn down all the old systems and build this digital system on top of it?
Well, at this point, I think what they'll probably do is they'll have um, enough. And so far, when you've looked at what Iran has done in retaliation, it doesn't seem like there was really any loss of life. It almost seems like I have some Persian friends that tell me that the mullahs are all Zionists, and that seemed to me to be very clear during their little back and forth that we saw. It seemed like they were all on the same team, almost snickering about it.
Yeah.
Um, and but if it goes along with the story of bringing peace to the Middle East, which I think will sell, you could sell anything to the masses. I think. Then what they'll do is they'll probably have some event to kick it off, and it doesn't need to be much, and it'll probably be swift and quick, and it'll take the mullahs out, and they'll bring in Reza Pahlavi, who's already been, you know, on the campaign trail, you know, selling up his, you know, his supporter. But he's got a lot of supporters. A lot of my Persian friends are very savvy, and they understand that Reza Pahlavi is owned by the crown and has always been, you know, his whole life, and been groomed by the crown for this very moment to you know, keep that power out of the hands of Persians and in the hands of, you know, foreign powers. But that looks like how it'll unfold. I think there's already a relationship I've seen between the Trump group and Reza Pahlavi. And that'll be considered a brilliant move of peace, you know, because there'll be enough Iranians that'll celebrate that. There'll be a ton of Iranians that celebrate that. All the ones that international people know of, you know, like all the ones that are pushed out there in the media. Iran's a very, very interesting place. I learned a lot about Iran. I got to meet a lot of people online. I've only met a few in person
Mhm.
that are from there, and it's the most interesting place in the region. It's got the oldest ancient history of Persia. They only changed the name Persia from Persia to Iran recently, and it was a Westerner who talked him into doing that. Their people are known for being extremely educated and smart and brilliant and in every way. And so it makes sense that it's been taking this long to, you know, get it under their grips. But yeah, seems like it's coming. They're letting everyone know too, you know.
Yeah. So where do you think all of this started? Like as far as the mass deceit, the global system, the planning. Like I know some people have theories that it's just been the past 100 years. Some people say 200. I'm convinced that it's thousands of years
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
works. Um,
I think it's operating exactly how personally,
mhm.
I would say it's how it is supposed to be. There's nothing new under the sun. The place is run the way it's run. It's Earth. Welcome to Earth, you
Yeah,
know. That's what I think. But I don't have enough information to say otherwise. You know, like when you really get down to it, I'm lacking a great deal of information. All I've really gotten is from books, um, which I try to research and find the sources of those as often as I can, but I can't say I do that all the time. I've been like voraciously absorbing information since I was a kid. A lot of it is based on my gut. A lot of it is based on me talking to the creator of this whole place. Like, what is it? You know, just trying to figure it out. Um, but yeah, I would say on the most optimistic point of view, and I think this is kind of the opinion that almost every myth and every religion and every tradition basically kind of boils down to is that we are here to experience a place of suffering. Then there are breaks in between those suffering, and if you actually learn from your suffering and adapt accordingly and evolve spiritually from it, then you can actually really enjoy those in between moments and prepare yourself and be stronger for the next time you get slapped in the face in this place and something
yeah,
happens and challenges you. And once again, you can choose to climb upward and as a result get stronger and change and become something else. And I guess in the best case scenario, I tend to believe that's what's going on here because I've seen it. I've done both. I have fallen into the victimhood slide for a bit. Fortunately, I don't like sliding, and I
yeah,
can feel it sliding, and I hate it so much that no matter how much I might scream and cry about it, I will claw my way upwards. So thank God. I know I've noticed a lot of people have no problem sliding, and a lot of people have even learned how to slide in a controlled way where they kind of, you know, hate it less. You
yeah,
know, um, but that's what I think is going on. Best case scenario. Worst case scenario, I'm open minded. I know a lot of people that say we're in some type of a trap, and that like the near death experiences are part of the trap, and this also you can find throughout the entire historical record. This is just another way of looking at it. Like for example, the Buddhists. There are certain groups of Buddhists that their whole goal is learning how to escape this. There's this trap, and they say that the way to when you die, if you can practice dying consciously, which they do by waking up in their dreams, because they say that the place that you go to in the dream state is the same place you go to once you leave the body. It's like an intermediary zone or whatever.
yeah.
And they say if you can die consciously, that you at least have a better chance of not getting stuck back into this loop. So it's kind of a common theme that a lot of people say. And I guess on my worst days, I'm like, golly, I really hate this place. I don't want to ever come back. I hope this isn't a loop. But you know, on my best days, I'd be lying if I say I don't enjoy it. You know,
Yeah.
some people would even say that makes me a bad person or a sinner that I actually enjoy this you know meat grinder physical reality. But I do enjoy myself sometimes.
Yeah, I agree. Like, when I'm talking about, you know, everything's all staged and fake and doom and gloom and stuff, I think people make the assumption that I'm sort of emotionally attached to the things that I'm reporting, which I do think that they are important and people should, you know about these things and have that awareness and stuff. But you know, you have to find this like fine line and balance, and still live your life. You know, you can't be consumed by the things that you're talking about and covering and aware of. Like I try to make time for the things that I feel like give my life value, and I think that's important. And I don't know if everybody does that all the time.
No, I can guarantee you they don't. I think living in truth as much as you can. Like I don't claim to know the truth, but I definitely pursue it religiously, you could say. And to me, like it's not doom and gloom. It's understanding that you're somehow owned. Like I believe there is some kind of species, and I don't think they're human. I don't think humans are the apex predator. I think there's something higher up on the food chain that's smart enough to not be seen by us. And I think it probably has a document of some sort that says it owns title to my body and your body, and maybe the entire flock on Earth, maybe just the ones on North America. Who knows? Maybe there's a bunch of different species that don't, they got a bunch of different flock. Who knows?
Yeah.
I do tend to think that that's what's going on, and that doesn't mean I'm like doom and gloom and black pill. It just means I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And it's good to know that. It's good
Yeah.
to know that if you're considered livestock by something, it's good to know that, as opposed to playing along with some bullshit story. And I'm even reluctant to say because it makes you feel good, because
Yeah.
I can't imagine how that would make anyone feel good. Like, for example, I've injured myself and been in denial. I've caught myself injuring myself and kind of going into a state of like, no, I'm fine, I'm cool, I'm fine. Well, I'm bleeding out, and a friend of mine's got to be like, no, dude, it's pretty bad. And I'm like, no, I'm good, man, I'm good. So that's not really like a healthy thing to do. That could kill you.
Yeah.
If I didn't have a friend there to stop me from bleeding out, it could have killed me. So it's good to like be like, oh shit, I could die, and I got to do something about it. And right now we're living in a time like you might not be able to stop it. The only way we're going to stop it is mass
Yeah.
unity and love. And that doesn't seem, I don't see what's going to get us there at this point. After seeing how people are through COVID, I don't really see it. But if you can't stop it, I think there is a great opportunity to be less of a slave. For example, like the UCC, I'm sure a lot of you and probably a lot of your listeners are aware of like the idea of the birth certificate being that certificate of title of ownership and stuff like that, and it's traded. And I think this is all pretty much, legit. I mean, when I ordered my birth certificates from California, they even referred to it as a banknote. It even says in the bottom, it's made by a banknote company. It's a banknote,
Oh, wow.
And so the thing that a lot of us have been studying for decades is trying to figure out how to redo our paperwork with the UCC to give ourselves better standing. And what I've learned in that process is I do think there's a remedy in there, but the remedy is only going to work for you if you take responsibility for your own person. If you're learning from things and adapting, and you're not raping and killing people and stealing, that's a big thing. Natural law, or if you have to learn to not be an animal, I think. And if you can do that, I think there's a remedy. But it was always a trick trying to find that remedy out. Whereas now, I guess there's always a silver lining. And I guess one of the silver linings now is that if you really want to take responsibility for your own person and do the right thing, instead of just saying the whole world's got to do the right thing, just maybe I'll try to do the right thing. I think there is an opportunity right now to get set up with like an LLC and a trust, so that this digital identity thing doesn't have to be, like a straight out of the gate slave tag. You could probably set it up to where you could take care of your own slave. That's kind of how the UCC idea was, is you could set it up in a way where you're basically letting the state know, look, I get it. I know I'm not this human. I was born into this human. The human has its problems. I got it though. I'm going to take care of it. You don't have to take care of it. Because if people don't, and that's what the system does. The system tries to encourage people to be stupid or to be reliant upon them. Because once you start going to the state and saying, you know what, I kind of need something, then that's it. Then like, oh, okay, if you need us, then here, we'll take care of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to preach to everybody, when I'm on my soapbox, like, you need to have faith in yourself. You need to try to find ways to like divest away, move away from the systems that, because they've, for years and years and years, thousands probably, they've bred this dependence of like, oh well, without us you're going to be doomed, whether that was, to hell or whatever sort of uh like super negative thing that they could sort of hold over your head. And now like with government, it's, if we were to fall into anarchy tomorrow, people would be killing each other, and it would be a apocalyptic sort of thing. And it's all these sort of minutia steps towards fostering that dependency, and trying to get people to believe in the government or the powers that be more than themselves. And I think people are capable of great things. We've just been conditioned to not believe that we can help ourselves,
Yeah. And now we're moving into the thing that bothers me the most. Really, it's the only thing that I guess I could really say that bothers. I'm really to boil it down. Like, I believe we have abilities that we are not aware of. Psychic abilities, for one. We're able to affect reality um, simply by having more restraint over our mind and our thoughts. You know, part of it I think has to do with recognizing that this is just a human that's going to be dead in a short period of time, and it has certain attributes about it, and you can actually do a lot more than I think we're well, definitely than what we're taught. And it almost seems like the transhumanist thing is, in many ways, just trying to mirror our natural abilities. And I remember like being a fan of Robert Anton Wilson, great writer, one of my favorite writers. And one of the only flaws about his character I thought was that he was a transhumanist. And I never understood transhumanists for many reasons. One, it seems like they're afraid to die, which
Yeah.
seems childish. I understand that, but it's a childish thing. And if you're afraid to die, then I would say toughen up and get over it, because we're all going there, we're all dying.
Yeah.
And I think I was always right in that assumption, because when you see these people, they seem like they're psychotic. Like, to not accept your death is a bit crazy. But the other thing I never liked about it was, like, we should be learning to master these bodies,
Hmm.
whether it's, and I'm not saying we all have to become like psychic, neo masters in the
Yeah.
matrix, but at least learn how to take care of them and nurture them, keep them fit and healthy and strong and at optimal levels, so that your mind and your spirit are also operating at the highest levels and stuff. That's kind of my goal before I die. If I could achieve one good thing in the matrix, I think it might be to at least learn how to take better care of my human before I die.
Yeah.
But this transhumanist thing it's just like, forget about that. Forget about that. Just be lazy, take a pill. Here's an implant, and I don't like that.
Call it a day. Yeah, I've found that I've kind of reached like the same conclusion, where it's like the better you take care of yourself, your body gives that effort and investment back to you by feeling better and being capable of doing more. And I, even in the short time that I've sort of made a few life changes, like trying to only eat things from like local farms and farmers that don't have the additives and preservatives and stuff, like I feel better. I feel like I don't have as many health problems. I get sick less. Big food adding all of these things like artificial preservatives and stuff has been known to be really damaging on like the gut, especially, which has connections to like the vagus nerve and just your like overall well-being, your microbiome and stuff. And I think as if we're able to sort of step away from this artificial, I consider it like a hijacking of our food systems, because they're just shoving all sort of chemicals and stuff. The fewer of those things that you can incorporate into yourself, the better you'll be. And I think that you're right in that, like EMF, big food additives, all of these other things are sort of designed to keep us in this like depressive state and keep us not feeling well and getting sick all the time and stuff.
Yeah, no, I agree. They're gonna remedy it with the tech. Do you think we have the tech? Do you think we're infected? Like, I didn't get the shot either, but I breathe the air and stuff. And my research, the research, if you kind of want to stop at a certain point because it's depressing, but the research does seem to be showing that this nanotech is everywhere.
Yeah, I've even seen reports and stuff about them potentially trying to like put it in food. I had a video that I did for Iconic that sort of took a headline from last year talking about vaccine lettuce.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh yeah. No, yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and I've heard people. I can't remember if they were officially with the CDC or some sort of doctor or scientist, but saying like we need to put it in water, like we have with fluoride and stuff. So it seems like they're trying to get it anywhere and everywhere that they can, so that there's no escape.
Yeah.
And it seems like who was it's a guy from the WEF, I think Havari, who said that we're all just hackable animals.
Yeah.
And it just seems like they have this sort of god complex almost, where they see themselves, it's like an artificial caste system. So even though we're all born here and of the flesh and stuff, that some people believe that they just truly are entitled to have subservience to listen to everything that they do and say, like they think they're gods almost.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Like when you look at a lot of the transhumanists, I do think that they're in many ways, at least the ones we're seeing, I think they're useful idiots. Well, I
Yeah.
think even Peter Thiel and Elon Musk, they're also useful idiots. These are front men being put out there to the unfortunate ones. Could you imagine having their job? What a fucking shitty nightmare job. You're the face of evil, you
Yeah.
know,
Have you
when everyone
seen
wants to see hang and stuff.
have you seen that most recent interview with Peter Thiel where he said that he thinks that only Ivy Leaguers should be able to hold like political office?
No, but that sounds like something that he would say. Like he's not that bright. Like he seems obviously like Elon, like a MK Ultra, like exactly what you would expect out of like an MK Ultra program psychopath, you know. There was a question when he was asked about Israel, I think,
Hmm.
the Lavender, AI Lavender weapon system that is being used by Palantir. Palantir is an extremely dark side when you get into what their military applications are that nobody talks about. I learned about, you can't even really find it online. I know a guy who's high level military combat pilot. He still does private contracting for the government. So I can't say his name or anything like that. But what I'm saying is not that, like, you can verify what I'm going to say. But he said what they would do in the Middle East is he would have a special forces guys on a plane with him. They would have someone's number. They would punch the number into Palantir. Palantir would take them right to him on the ground, and then they'd hover above him, listen in, like not just listen in on his phones, but they could access his entire phone through Palantir and like look at everything that's going on his phone, activate his camera on his phone, all that stuff. And then if they wanted to, then they would send guys down. They would grab them. They'd bring them up, and they did all they need is a phone number. That's all they needed is the guy's phone number, and they can do that. And there's stories leaking out of cops doing that. Like cops have Palantir, so they can check your texting, and then they can ask you questions like, "Did you just come from a bar or something like that?" And you're like, "No, sir. Well, your text says you're just coming from a bar." You
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, it's crazy because I see a bunch of people that say, like I'll take the Signal app for example, that has its own sort of basket of connections and stuff that I have questions about, but people always say, well, this is encrypted, that's encrypted, and I'm like, man, encryption is dead. I'm almost convinced that encryption was never something like actually legitimate. When you go back to like the United States and their like cryptography relationships with companies like AG Crypto, where they were selling cipher machines, to all the countries in World War II, but then like secretly giving the keys to all these cipher machines to the government,
Yeah.
the US government. It's like I feel like anything that you make digitally is just sort of like compromised upon inception. There's no way to like, you'd have to physically handwrite a note and then hand it directly to the person you want to have it and say burn it after you
Yeah.
read it. And
I
that's like,
assume that.
yeah.
I don't assume there's any privacy. In fact, it's interesting because it's once again, since I was a child, of my earliest memories, I was convinced that something was looking in through my windows and that there was no privacy at all. So I'm very familiar with the idea of there's no such thing as privacy. I've never felt any sense of privacy in this experience on Earth, and especially now, like the
Yeah.
idea of, I mean, the one thing I will say is it does seem like the cryptography on the blockchain does seem because no one's yet to hack an actual, cold storage wallet.
Mhm.
You can hack, exchanges and this and that. There's people are saying quantum computing will change that, but then the hash graph has already been described to say that it's resilient to that. So there might be, I wouldn't be surprised if there's something there, but that doesn't mean it's private at all. Like it's still transparent. Like you can still see what's going on. Um, it's just secure,
Yeah.
and that's what they're going to be selling. They're going to be selling it's really brilliant. I think the way they're doing it, like yeah, there's not going to be any privacy, but that's just a drawback. That it'll be considered like a side effect.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't our intention, but the only way we could protect all the kids, and the only way we could shut down the borders, and the only way we could get rid of these crazy guys that are robbing your houses and stuff, and lock them all up in an El Salvador prison where they can work as slaves for the rest of their life. The only way we can do that is with this, digital ID system, and it just happens to be that there's also no privacy whatsoever at all. So.
Yeah. It seemed to work so well when they did it with the Patriot Act, right? Where it's like, oh, well, if
Yeah.
you want us to be secure and safe, then we have to spy on everybody and we have to look at everyone like they're terrorists.
Yeah.
So who do you think, if you had to guess, because I mean it's almost impossible, I think, to really narrow it down, but who do you think is the like main driver of everything? Who do you think like the Jesuits and Israel and the Vatican all like roll up to like this singular entity?
Yeah, I do actually. And the main reason I come to that, like I said, I don't know. I don't have enough information. And
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people out there that claim that they know. And immediately, that's an immediate disqualifier for me because it's like, if I know, like I said earlier, I know human beings. That's one thing. I know myself and I know all the other humans around me. So that's probably the strongest data point I have. Um, but all the researchers and all, if you compile everything together, not just all the researchers, but all the actual myth and the history and the story, it does seem to me that Rome never fell. Rome just rebranded itself into the Vatican City and spread out throughout the world. That's really what created Britain. Great Britain was a creation of Rome,
Mhm.
and the crown has still, I think, amazing amounts of power. What's incredible about the crown is, like people will say, if you want to know who's in control, it's who you're not allowed to criticize. Okay,
Mhm.
there's an argument there, but what's even more fascinating about Great Britain is you're allowed to criticize them all you want, but nobody does. You
Yeah.
know, they get away with murder. I mean, they basically were the most recent colonial, and they had power. They brag about it. There's nothing. Whatever. If it's beneath the sun, it's part of England. There's a saying there. I worked with a carpenter in New Zealand, a British guy, and that was his joke. He was making fun of the local New Zealand, the Kiwis, and he's like, I'm British. Wherever I go, everyone else is foreigners. So it's ingrained. But no one ever calls out the crown at all, and so it's very clever. And personally, I think that's what's happening with Canada and Greenland. I think the crown is closing up shop in Great Britain, and they're going to come moving over to North America, probably by the Denver airport. I'm starting to think all those, decades old rumors that the Crown bought up most of the ground around the Denver airport is probably true, and it's probably related to what we've heard about some type of reptile creatures that live underneath there and have lived there for thousands of years.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think too, because I mean they've existed on this, by comparison to America anyway, like this small little island country for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years even, and knowing that they're kind of coming over here, they want to set up shop and expand even.
Yeah.
It's like where are we going to be in? I mean, I know this doesn't really affect me directly, but where are we going to be in 100 years? What's the state of the world going to look like?
Yeah, I personally think that, like, the yin yang is one of my favorite symbols in my Earth experience. I think it reflects a lot of truth about our reality, and you can just keep getting deeper into it. I think it's very important for me personally to try to be that fine line between the yin and the yang as much as I can. But it also tells me that this place is an engine, and it's run off of this, what we want to call negative positive, just like you see in electricity. Negative and positive poles is a natural part of the energy that drives this place, whatever it is. And I think it's probably always been the same amount of yin and yang, and probably always will be the same amount of yin and yang. And so I think the future will have just as much good as you can find in the world today, and it'll have just as much bad as you can find in the world today. It'll just be different. I might be wrong. Maybe we're about to enter into like the worst era of humanity ever. I still kind of think we're coming out of the worst era of humanity personally, and I don't think we're in a golden age in our lifetimes. But I think eventually we're heading there. I do think eventually, after getting our asses whooped enough times, people will start figuring these things out. Because really, all it comes down to is a little bit of humility and love, really. Because all of this could have been avoided if we had enough humility and love in our hearts to like stand with our neighbors, even though we might not like them. Nobody really likes their neighbors.
Yeah.
But with enough humility and love, all of this could be avoided.
Yeah, I agree, and it's tough because it's gonna take like some sort of mass awakening. I don't believe it's gonna happen in my lifetime, but if at least I can go out like recruiting enough, people that'll pass on like future generations that maybe teach their kids and stuff, maybe I'll feel like I've done some good in this world. And that's kind of what compels me to do this. Is like, I don't think there's going to be some, you know 2 years from now everyone's going to be like, well, wait a second, I think we're being fucked over. Like,
Well, more importantly than that, I don't think we're going into like such a closed system that our voice isn't going to have a very important transformative effect into the future. I think that, for example, no matter how you feel about them, like I said, I have a love-hate relationship with people. Most people annoy me.
yeah,
Don't get me started about that. That's stupid nonsense stuff. But I do love humanity, and I want to see humanity free themselves from this. So, however you feel about the woo-woo New Agers, I think they're pretty right on. Astrology, you might not like astrology, but astrology is a fascinating thing in that it makes uh, time predictable. You
yeah,
know, and you can look at the age of Aquarius, and the age of Aquarius does point to technology. It points to control. It points to everything that we're talking about, but it also points to some pretty good things. It points to more of an awakening, more of a connection that we have with each other. And so I don't think like um, I know some people think I'm giving up, but I knew since 2012 that the only way we were ever going to get out of this is with love, a massive awakening. The kind of thing that's never happened ever before in recorded history. The kind of thing that we'd be singing songs about for 1,000 years because it was just like pure poetry and beautiful, the greatest moment that ever happened.
yeah,
But I actually thought that was possible before COVID. Once, like I said, once I saw the masks, it was I'm a different person. I really am. It really slammed me. I honestly thought we were there, and now I'm like, no, we're nowhere close. We're nowhere close. But still, my point being is, it's not the end of the world. I don't think we can affect the way it's going,
yeah,
and the way we do that, in my opinion, is like I would like to still learn how to master being a naturally organic human and eating local and eating and supporting local food so that we can, create good nourishing crops so that we don't have to rely completely on supplements, which I think are important right now. Learn how to be healthy, learn how to take care of, because if we are just having this experience as a human on a human farm, it does kind of make sense to me that okay, the least I can do is learn how to master this thing, is take care of it so that nothing else has to take care of it, so that I don't ever have to rely upon any system to take care of this thing. It's my job. It's like if I had a pet dog, I would take care of that pet dog. I wouldn't expect anyone else or any system to take care of it. It would be my job. So same thing, learn how to do that, and then from there start branching out, learn how to take care of the ones around you and take care of each other. And I ultimately think, like Mark Passio talks about this, once we all start abiding by natural law, loving each other and taking care of each other and ourselves, then all the government will just cease to exist. It
yeah,
will have no more purpose. The only purpose it has is because there's a bunch of animals out here that want to eat each other and kill each other.
yeah.
you know
Yeah. No, I agree. If you can get enough people, even if it's just one person at a time, one person a month, 10 people a year, every drop in the bucket ends up slowly adding up, and they pass that knowledge on to their kids and so on and so forth. So I do think that you're right that like our words do have an impact still. And it's actually funny you bring up the age of Aquarius, because that was just what, like March 21st, and the end of the like phase of the Yuga cycle. I think I saw
that's debatable. There's a lot of different people that say when that's happening, but and I don't think I've ever heard anyone that has definitive an answer on that, because the calendars have been screwed with for so long and everything like that. But I do think it's indisputable that we are shifting right now from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. And the Bible is full of astrotheology. The Bible talks about the shifting of ages. I have my own suspicions about the shifting of ages. I think that they're accompanied by actual physical shifts on the surface of the earth
mhm,
that change the landscape, change the maps over time in little increments, almost like a clock face. That's kind of my wild, crazy theory that I have. I do think that nobody knows. I won't believe it until I see for myself where we live. But I've seen enough scientific evidence to show that all the theories about where we live don't add up.
yeah,
Which is I find to be kind of fun. Like it's
yeah,
like it reminds me. It's very humbling. and the more humility we can cultivate in this lifetime, the better. It's really like a secret power. Gratitude and humility is really all the energy and fuel that a spirit needs, I think, in this existence.
Yeah, I agree, especially like being in this space. I'm not gonna name names again, but like you'd see so many people sort of rise to this certain level of whatever influence or success or whatever, and their ego seems to sort of consume them. And it's really confusing because I mean, to me, like I'll tell people every day, like I'm just a guy in his room. I'm a little retarded, and I'm just curious about things, and I
Yeah,
investigate things that interest me and try to share that with other people so that I can pay the knowledge that's been given to me like forward
yeah.
and stuff like that.
I don't really care for it personally. I've known since like I've been a artist since I was a kid, music and writing and video and visual stuff, and I loved it. It's something I've always loved, and so I've always wanted to have success with that, so that I could, make my living doing that. And I knew that that would likely, not necessarily, but likely come along with a certain amount of fame of some sort. And for whatever reason, once again, like I said, I know when I was 12 I'm retarded, but I do have my strengths. I do have my strengths, and one of my strengths is knowing just knowing in my gut that fame is not a good thing. It's a burden. It's I would say it's an equal. You get a lot of people loving you. You get the same amount of people that hate you. It's like you're offering yourself up as this weird personality that's up for grabs to a madhouse public.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't come with money, it's a total burden. Like some people have the misfortune of having fame and no fortune. I mean, that, at least it should have some money that accompanies it to put. I have a very small amount of fame, but still, it's enough for me to, like, I kind of want to back out of it and like Homer in the bushes and kind of get rid
Yeah.
of what fame I have, because it's so much better to live privately in this world where nobody knows who you are, or just your close friends and the people you choose to have in your life know who you are, in my opinion. Like, it is a wild jungle that we live in. But
Yeah.
another interesting thing is people's desire for power. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I definitely have greed and lust, and I've had to. When I was a kid, I lied and I stole, and I had to learn through empathy that I didn't want to do that anymore. Um, but I've never desired like controlling another person or eating another person or dominating over another person. And that's what I've found the most strange is there's a lot of people that seem to have that. And that's kind of what's leading us. That's one of the biggest problems I think I see. And that's just in us. Like, because there's a lot of that in people that I think through COVID, a lot of people, they weren't the most illuminated people, enlightened people spiritually, but they were smart enough to recognize that I could get some power if I do this.
Yeah.
I think anyone can join that club of power if you're willing to get screwed over, if you're willing to take it up the ass, which I think is a membership to almost any gang club, which is why one of my favorite quotes is Groucho Marx, I think, said I would never be a member of any club that would have me. And once again, I understood the value of that at a very young age. I always thought that was one of the funniest things that guy ever said because it just made so much sense. But yeah, people are, especially, one on one. I think George Carlin said this. One on one, people are amazing. They're
Yeah.
they're incredible. So you'll find the most beautiful people. And it's never ceases to amaze you when you get into like a one on one conversations with people, and you're like, oh wow, you're awesome. But once you start making groups,
Hmm.
even in the smallest amount, it just goes totally insane and usually dark. If it's not maintained under strict controls, then it almost always spirals off into chaos and darkness.
Yeah, it's like every form of collectivism seems to have their own like skeletons in the closet. And that's
Yep.
why I think it's so powerful to like focus on the individual. Like first you focus on the self and like you look inward, and then you just keep your circle small, like care about the people that care about you, and don't look at people as like this value of what you can get from them and what they have to offer you and stuff. And especially just like when we were on the AM wake up show, you started to talk about that theory of Earth, and I was just genuinely extremely curious about that, and how you had mentioned that it's sort of set up like a clock and stuff, and I'd love to sort of talk about some of that, because that has sort of
Yeah, that's one
interested
of my
me
favorite
since.
subjects, actually. I did David Icke, I guess, is working on Iconic's working on a documentary, I think, about Israel. I don't want to give anything out of the, but they asked me to do a little snippet as to what I think's going on right now, and so I was like, sure. But anyways, what I put some graphics in the video, so because I would love to make I will make a video on this.
Hmm.
This is years of research. This is my best guess, and it's such a wild one too that but it explains everything. It literally explains everything. So the idea of a pole shift gets in a lot of heat with flat earthers. I wouldn't
Hmm.
consider myself a flat earther, but and the reason I wouldn't consider myself a flat earther is because I don't know. I know that the heliocentric model doesn't make sense. I know that what's fascinating is for 500 years the curvature math on the heliocentric model would never add up to empirical data, and there's never been an excuse for that, which is the most fascinating part. There's never like an answer of like, well, that's because blah blah blah. You know, it's just kind of
Yeah.
like, you know,
Yeah.
it's kind of a
Space.
big deal. And so, in my opinion, it throws the whole model out. There's other things that throw the model out, but that's a big one. And so that's interesting. And so when you mention pole shift, a lot of the flat earthers will be like, well, no, we're not on the outside of a globe and stuff like that. But you know, Edgar Casey predicted a pole shift, and he said the way he described it was Polaris will no longer be the star. Because right now, it's interesting. This is another heliocentric model thing that this wouldn't work on the heliocentric model, but you can set a camera up to a slow exposure on the North Star, and over time lapse, you'll see that the North Star stays exactly the same and everything kind of moves around the North Star. That would be impossible on the heliocentric model.
Yeah.
Anyone can do that. Very interesting to do. But according to Edgar Casey, is when the pole shift happens, it won't be that North Star anymore. It'll be another star that we aim in on. And I believe there is also some written data that shows that there were other stars in the past that were used for the central star, and that it's not always the one it's been right now. So my theory is the pole shift is, like I said, a clock face. If you wanted an image, you could go to Google and you could search up Prague clock. That's probably all you got to do, Prague clock, and you'll see a clock that has what appears to be the symbols of the great year. It appears to have the 12 zodiac signs, and it appears to have like a sun or a moon or something moving around. And what that is doing, I believe, in actual on its face, is it's marking the 12 months of the year astrologically. There are some finer details in some of these clocks in Prague that are still existing that suggest it's actually also marking the great year.
Mhm.
The great year is what I said when we're moving into Pisces, into about 2,000 years long, and the entire great year is a little over 25,000 years. And it's very well, it's one of the, I think one of the best kept secrets in secret societies. It's, you inevitably get to the great year and cataclysm, in my opinion, when you research any of the secret societies and any of these secrets, really. They all kind of lead to this idea that civilizations can be destroyed and lost in the sand and in memory and forgotten about. And there does seem to be a cyclical nature to it. And if it was that, if we're on the surface, a flat surface, and the sun and the moon are local, meaning that they're not millions of miles away, and they do appear to be local. Like you can see sun rays that, if you can do the math, and it's like 10,000 miles up or something like that. But
Mhm.
we're told it's 90. You know, all the stuff checks out scientifically, which is really interesting. If we are in that type of an environment, then the sun would dictate the area that's not frozen, as if we're like in some frozen petri dish or something. And that's why the wall of Antarctica is a big ice wall, because everything outside of this internal ecosphere is just frozen. And then you look at this prod clock, and what if we're in some kind of weird system like this, and every 2,000 years there's a shift. It's a small incremental shift. This is actually written about in the Bible too. There's a year that they write about when this happened, and they say the amount of degrees that the sun shifted by. It's very interesting. And so if that were to happen, it would thaw out certain areas, exposing new land. It would freeze other areas, taking other land away. It could do all kinds of crazy things. It would explain almost every conspiracy theory out there. It would explain all the lost civilization stories and stuff like that, the pyramids, the Sphinx. Um, it would explain the reactions that everyone's having right now, as if there's a mad hurry to get all
Mhm.
this stuff done. It would explain Canada and Greenland. I don't believe they're just trying to slowly march us into a one world government, because there's always been a one world government, and I think it serves their purposes to give us a sense of freedom. Whatever they're farming us for, I think they prefer like a free range type of human to certain extents. They squeeze us only when they have to, it seems like. And so I imagine once they get us through the shift and consolidate and get us through the other side, then it'll probably be an era of thriving.
Mhm.
Get out there and have a good time, everyone. We did it. And but what's interesting is Russia is not talking about global warming. Russia is talking about a pole shift. And average people in Russia, like when I first learned this when I was over there, I was at the bar and there's like a 20-year-old bartender. And I was like, "Do you know anything about a pole shift?" And he was like, "Oh, yeah." And he went on and on and on about it. And he knew everything there is to know about a pole shift coming in our very near future that's going to thaw out a good part of Siberia, and it's going to give a bunch of new land to the Russian Arctic. The Russian government is openly talking about this. Russian media is completely controlled, and they're all talking about it. They're spending billions of dollars building infrastructure, preparing for this. They're incentivizing more people come to Russia and have families. They're incentivizing childbirth. They're incentivizing young families. They're incentivizing foreigners to come there. Siberia is like the new dream place to go if you want to be a homesteader. You can buy land on the cheap and you can homestead. And everyone's doing it. It's great. People from all over the world. It's like a whole new weird Orthodox Christian. There's Christian Orthodox prophecies that say
Mhm.
this is going to happen. Edgar Cayce said this is going to happen. And then you compare that to what's happening in like North America and Western Europe, where there appears to be like a liquidation going on and a consolidation, especially like Canada and Greenland.
Yeah.
It's almost like the powers that be know that Russia, you're going to get dealt a really good hand when this is all said and done. But North America, you're going to take a hard hit. And the only way you're going to get through it is you got to do a lot of work. And
Yeah.
I kind of think that's what's coming, and that's why they're on their timeline. That's why people like AOC, she's not lying when she says the world's going to end in 20 years. She was probably like, if you get into the alien abduction experience, which is, I think, kind of dim-witted to dismiss because there's thousands of them, and a lot of them suggest it's the government. So it's
Mhm.
like, but whatever's happening, the common thread is they're all shown images of this cataclysm happening in the future, and this is what's happening. We're trying to get through this. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get through this big devastating moment, and then on the other side of it, there's a bit of a golden age. It does explain everything. I think that the ones that run this place seem to have to abide by certain rules as well. Like, I don't think they control the weather. I
Yeah.
think they can. I think they're learning how to control the weather. I think just like they're hoping to learn how to biohack us with tech, they're trying to mirror and replicate what this place is, and so they're trying to understand it more. When you look into, there's a lot of things like Operation Fishbowl that appears as if at the highest levels there were people that don't exactly know where we are either. There's
Yeah.
just a pecking order of
And
control.
and so with that, like that massive shift that you were talking about with Russia and the certain parts of like the Arctic wall melting, do you see like climate change, that whole narrative sort of being them attempting to stop it or slow it down or
Or maybe as a
something?
cover story.
Yeah.
Maybe as a cover story, so that, because I think that for whatever reason, if we are on a flat surface, which, like I said, just do your own math and science, and you'll come to the same conclusion that people have come to for 500 years. We are on a flat surface, and it's a motionless flat plane. And what it is, who knows? But that's what all the science says. Even though all the great scientific minds will agree with that the geocentric model is, no one likes to say that. But if that is the case, I think it's arguably easily the biggest secret. It's the biggest lie there is, because everybody knows that you're a retard if you think that. Everybody knows that. Like the smartest people out there, even the smartest people in the alternative news media, they all know for a fact that if you think the earth is flat, you're just a friggin' idiot.
Yeah.
So it really is, it's not just the biggest lie, it's the most solid. And that's what's so interesting when you actually do the math and you do the science. It's the most mind-blowing thing about it is like, wow, like how did they sell this? Like, and it still holds. So yeah, if it is the biggest lie, why? And that's a whole other argument. Why is it the biggest lie? But it would seem like they want to keep that lie. And so if that's what I think global the man-made weather is. I think they might be trying to mitigate what's coming. Like they might have some idea of what's coming, and they're trying to make it less devastating,
Mhm.
which they would have every reason to do because they are going to take a massive infrastructure hit. And uh, and that seems like what everything's happening right now is to try to, prepare and mitigate all this stuff. But I also think a lot of it is cover story,
Yeah.
you know, and also probably to spread nanotech.
Yeah.
But yeah. So when it does happen, when the shift does happen, it'll probably be blamed on this global warming thing, even though Russia's saying it was a pole shift. People will forget, and then they can just get on with their business.
Yeah. Um, yeah, it's really interesting because it seems like, especially now, even some of the people like on the left and Democrats and stuff have sort of stopped pressing climate change and global warming is hard, more for like identity politics and things of that nature. But you also have people like Elon, who's like a champion of the right, who, making electric vehicles and says he believes in climate change and the carbon tax, which could just
Yeah.
be lies to further his
No, I
own
think it's
agenda.
coming. I think carbon
But
tax is part of the deal for
yeah.
sure.
Um, so I know you've sort of described yourself as like spiritual multiple times, at least to me. And what do you think is out there? Like, what do you think, is it an existence in like another dimensional plane, or
I have no idea. I mean,
something?
I guess the spiritual, I use that term. I suppose everything's triggering these days. When you get on the subject, everyone gets triggered by something. But mainly because I don't identify as a human being. I do not see myself as a human being. My human being is complicated, interesting, lovable, stupid. Um, it's kind of gross. The whole eating and crapping thing is get because it's very tiresome and stuff like that. It's kind of an animal, and I believe that I don't know what I am, a soul, a spirit. I do believe that we are all. I believe that everything exists is from the same source, God. When I use the word God, I tend to use the word creator. Um, just because it seems more encompassing of what I'm talking about. Like I don't believe there's any adversaries. Like I don't have a favorite god over other gods. The thing that I pray to is the thing that is everything, all and
Yeah.
everything. I'm a part of that thing, and so are you, and so is everything else, and nothing exists that isn't a part of that. And so if there is such thing as evil, which I think there is, there's this yin and yang element. It's all part of this one creation. So I do believe that simply because I was born with that. Like I distinctly, my earliest memories were having a personal relationship to this unseen, unknown force that I had faith in, that I believed would take care of me in a dark, dangerous world that doesn't make any sense to me.
Hmm.
That was always my love and my happiness and my anchor and my everything. And out from there, I would venture, and often I would be the prodigal son, as they say. Often I would venture too far and get myself into some extra trouble. But that force was always there to help me get back up on my feet and stuff. Other than that, I question these things all the time. Like, what happens when the human dies? Does this thing that has memory and is able to talk to you right now, is that going to be kapoof, gone forever? Or will the energy just get recycled back into the whole thing? I have no idea. I do know that I mentioned the Tibetan, there's a branch of Tibetan Buddhists that believed if you could wake up in the dream, you could wake up in the death.
Hmm.
And what they would do is every night they would practice waking up in the dream. It's very interesting. They would even take roll call, like the next day when they wake up, and they'd be like, "Hey, Tarthang, where were you last night? You slept, you didn't wake up." And so I decided to try their technique. It's very interesting in how you wake up in the dream. And so I attempted to do this, and after a few months, I was able to do it once. And then what really amazes me is I never tried doing it again. I think it was very intimidating. I've had people tell me that they have um, there's a name for a type of dreaming where you can
Lucid
control
dreaming.
lucid dreaming. I've had people tell me that a lot of people tell me that they've lucid dreaming, and I'm reluctant to say it's the same thing. And the only reason I'm reluctant to say it's the same thing was because it was easily, hands down, the most mind-blowing experience. And when people just say, "Oh, I do lucid dream," I'm always like, "Don't you think it's like crazy?" Because it was like I was literally in a different dimension. Like right now, I'm in a place I would call the physical world. When I woke up in the dream, it was like in an instantaneous moment, I went from the typical type of dream that, you know, often we're aware of our dreams, but it's almost like you're watching yourself in the
Yeah.
dream. And often you're watching yourself do dumb things. I know
Yeah.
I am, whatever. But this, it's like it was. I instantaneously when it happened, woke up in that space. I was in the same place I was in the dream, which was not this place. It was a different reality that had different physical qualities, predictable physical qualities, and it was clearly I was in a different dimension, and it was unbelievable. Like I was just as clear and coherent as I am now, but I'm in another dimension, and I knew that. I'm like, oh my god, I'm in another dimension, and I kind of lost my mind doing dumb shit just because it was like I was on a ride and I didn't have a plan.
Yeah.
But then I've done some research, and they call that the astral realm in Western occult. And there's a woman named Dion Fortune who's like a British witch from like 100 years ago, and she would describe going deliberately into the astral realm to do battle against evil. Um, and I think there's something to that. I think there's something to this Harry Potter. I think a lot of these secret societies have like, yin versus yang battles in the astral realm, and it's very interesting. I've never tried doing it again, but the reason I bring it up is because that's the closest evidence that I have to show that there are other dimensions that we have access to. And that actually does check out when you get into like what the occult is saying. And they call that the Tibetans call it the Bardo,
Hmm.
and Western occultists call it the astral realm. I think it's called Yesod in the Tree of Life in the Kabbalah and stuff like that. So I think there's a lot of truth to be found in these models as to like what the spiritual realm is and stuff. But in my experience, my whole thing is I'm just trying to take care of this human as good as I can, and be respectful and kind to the ones around me. Try to leave this world a better place than I found it, even if that's in the smallest minute way, which and realistically is all I can expect. And to try to be that fine line between the yin and the yang, and be aware of the truth as much as I'm capable of. That's about the best I think I can do in this life, and I consider that to be what I describe as a spiritual life.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always had sort of this especially when I was younger, like an on again, off again sort of relationship with religion, spirituality, and things. And as I've started to, I guess, awaken to the bigger picture of everything, my personal theory is that Earth is, what I guess I could consider like God, where it provides everything and has all these like systems and stuff, and whether
Yeah,
that's like fitting into the bigger picture of the stars and the universe around us. But it seems like, because it's got all of these like biodomes that have like self-regulating things and systems where animals have certain traits that interact with other animals to create this balance all the time. And it to me seems like Earth is almost like this sentient being that's always like
yeah,
self-regulating and
for sure.
stuff.
No, for sure. Like Avatar, right? Like
Yeah.
that's kind of what I was saying earlier. That I don't. That's what I don't like about transhumanism. Is I think transhumanism is stepping in to do a probably a horrible job of what we are supposed to be doing. Like I think that if we like learning how to eat better and eat local and take care of our bodies, that's step one. Once we learn how to do that and we can achieve that, and we get to the point where we love and respect each other to where government disappears, then I think what we're doing then is more on level of what we see animals doing, living in symbiosis with this creature.
Yeah.
It's like if you like for example, in the body, there's billions of cells in this human body, and each of these cells, it's fascinating if you look into like the work of Bruce Lipton. Um, and what we found is in the cell, each cell is like a little person. Each cell eats, it expels waste, it reproduces with other cells and creates other cells. It lives in communities and families and forms, entire like nation states and stuff like that. And then they all work together. And if you back out far enough, these billions of all independent little individual creatures become your body.
Yeah.
And now it's your job to take care of your body, which is like a galaxy made up of billions of little life forms, that really depend on you for their happiness. And so I think, as above, so below. People might get triggered by that saying too, but this is a nature of reality of the place that we live. And the same thing I think applies to the planet. Yeah, like we are all cells and individual creatures on this part of this planet. You can see, if you like to sit out on the porch and watch the birds or the squirrels or whatever you got around, you can see them in a state of Zen of with this. They understand where they are. They understand that, they got to move quick. because something might eat them,
Yeah.
and or they'll starve to death if they don't eat. And then outside of that, they might actually have the good fortune to like lay out in the sun and enjoy the moments, in this wild meat grinder that we're in. But yeah, I think that's ultimately like the goal, in my opinion, is to perfect that symbiosis that God intended.
Hmm.
Like the human body. Like if you just take care of the human body,
Yeah.
the body will heal from anything.
Yeah.
All you got to do is just give it what it needs, give it clean, healthy food. And it's not even that strict. Like there's a practice in Eastern religions called a mono diet where you just pick one food and you eat that one food for like 30 days. And it's just about observing what happens to your body. And I've done it. And what you observe is you observe that at first your body might have some adjustments, but eventually it'll adjust, it'll adapt, and it'll be operating on a very high level of strength and health. So it's shows you that the body is miraculous, and all you
Yeah.
got to do is like be consistent and take care of it. And
That's one thing that I always talk about is like, whatever willed us into existence and, us being here, like the human body for thousands and thousands of years has been like this self-regulating, self-healing, self-conditioning sort of thing. So seeing things like, oh, we need vaccines to take care of XYZ, and we need to, do these supplements and have all of these like chemicals and stuff. And I'm like, we existed for all of human history up until like 200 years ago without any of this stuff, and I don't see why we need it now,
yeah, that also falls in line with my um, cataclysm pole shift kind of thing too, because like I don't know how to make sense of that. Like it seems dangerous as hell. I don't think it's simple depopulation. I mean, I think there's a lot of it. I think there's a lot of depopulation going on, but I think there's more to it than that. It does seem almost like there is an actual um, motivation for some humans to want to survive something that might not be survivable, like by making yourself a machine,
Yeah.
or like Elon Musk talks about going to Mars. I don't believe in the details about that, but still, there's some message being given that in order for our very survival, we're going to have to do this extremely dangerous, radical thing. So maybe there's some truth to it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I used to think that the cataclysm was so brutal that like if you weren't underground, then you were done. Like if you weren't in the underground bases, and even then, maybe there's a certain amount of time before you can come to who knows.
Yeah.
So maybe there is a serious desire for like powerful people to not die, um, and they know that this thing is coming. Because that would be, like I said, I don't really identify that much with the whole power thing, but I would imagine that would come with it. Like once you had that power, that's all you would want is to not get rid of that power. Like for example, if you're a child in a powerful family and you're given a job in that family, you know that all that really matters is for you not to lose any of that power.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever heard of the term tescriel?
Tescriel?
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't think so. The
Um,
K?
with a C.
Tescriel? I don't think I have.
So I learned it a few weeks ago, and I've been trying to sort of dig into it, but it's an acronym. Can't remember what it stands for exactly, but even just like looking at their Wikipedia, and Mark Andreessen is actually like self-confessed, like I'm a tescriel. A lot of people put Elon Musk and others in like the transhumanist movement in this sort of category, and it's the we like a moral obligation to feel like they're the ones that are sort of in charge of continuing humanity and like getting us to that next level so that we
What a
can.
tescriel is?
Yeah. And it's like technology,
Epstein circle too.
yeah. And a lot of it's tied to like eugenics, as far as like we need to CRISPR out all of the like undesirable traits in people. We need to get the brain chip so that we can be smarter people and stuff like that. And I think a lot of these people, like Brian Johnson, I think is the guy that's like milking his son for his blood or whatever. I think that's sort of this like belief system that they follow, and I just personally can't relate to it. I don't
No, it's psychotic.
yeah.
I mean, it's so psychotic. It's like it's hard to imagine how many people are on board with it, you know, but that's another thing. Like I said, COVID changed me. Like before COVID, if you were to tell me that it would be fairly common that nurses and doctors would be murdering their patients for bonuses,
Yeah.
I'd have been like, nah, you watch too many dumb movies or
Yeah.
whatever. But that's a thing.
Yeah.
That that changed everything for me.
And
So yeah, I'm no longer surprised by any of this stuff actually.
yeah. Yeah, and so as far as you know, cuz I love the work that you do and the stuff that you cover. What exactly is like your process for researching? Like, is it you just follow things that you're interested in, or like is there a gauge of importance of like I found this thing, I really think people should know about it? Do you start from scratch or like try to incorporate other people's work?
I I have the first I gotta say, like everyone's really frustrated with Alex Jones at Infowars and stuff. And as a fan, as a longtime audience member, fan, stuff like that, I can relate, you know. But I can't say anything bad about Alex as a person or an employer because from day one, I was told for my reports, I was just told pick a story you think is important, do your best to tell the truth, and try to get as many as possible. And then instructor started walking away, and I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, wait!" I said, "Who do I show them to like get approval or something like that?" And the person was kind of annoyed, and they were like, "We don't have time for that."
Yeah.
So it was kind of a dream job. Oh, it was a dream job. It was the best job I ever had. I usually hate. I have a real problem with authority, and I've worked for friends and started hating them right off the bat. Like
Yeah.
anyone who's telling me what to do, I'm like, "Go fuck yourself." And I just can't help it. I'm a child in that sense. But so in that regard, he's the best employer I've ever had because he's never told me what to do, and he just leaves me alone, and it's great. So, but that's how it's been. And basically, what I do is I just chase whatever I think is the most interesting, the most novel. Typically, you know, what I'm drawn to. I was born, or at least from a very young age, I had questions because I knew the official story was bullshit. I had a very good bullshit detector, in my opinion. And no, I do actually. Over time, I've been able to do the data and look at the results, and it's pretty good. I'm usually right on. I still don't have the cockiness to like, you know, call things out in real time usually, but you know, hindsight, check, stuff like that. But I look for what I think is most interesting, and then in the past several years that I've been doing it like professionally, and I have an audience, um, it comes with a certain sense of obligation, I guess, responsibility with that, and so I would always pray on it and ask the same creator that I mentioned before that I rely on since I was a kid and ask for guidance. You know, please like show me, like give me a nice sign of like what's the most important story that people should know about. What do you think is like the most important? Um, you know, because I do try to like not be all sensational. I can't help that because that's just what I like the most wild and crazy I can find
Yep.
that's still true or appears to be true. That's where I just can't, you know, that's where I'm hooked. And so a lot of my reports tend to be like that. A lot of them tend to be like during COVID and the vaccines. Like I think I did my first anti-vax report in March of 2020. Um, I think it was the first report I did after they locked us down because as soon as they locked us down, like I think everyone I worked with there, we all knew immediately. We're like, vaccines are coming, you
Yeah.
know. So during that time, I think that was the most important work I think any of us did was the anti-vax work, in my personal opinion. That's what I'm most grateful for, having the opportunity to do. But I just try to do what I think is important these days. I'm at a bit of a crossroads because there's not that united like before. It was all about trying to build this unity and build this unstoppable force. But that's been set back so far, in my opinion, that I'm just trying to retrace my steps right now, trying to figure out what good can I do, what's the best I can do. Um, I'm still kind of focused on that. Like I'm thinking, like, what am I going to do? How am I going to surf this, and how am I going to adapt and overcome? And so I'm trying to share topics on that. I've been showing. I think I know what the future economy looks like almost at this point. But I'm not going to make any claims on that.
Yeah.
And that's just because of being a follower of crypto for so long, for libertarian reasons. I think most people can kind of suss out where it's going. Um, yeah, that's actually something I'm really trying to work on more. Like I plan on after I move, I'm moving in the process of moving. I move about every year. Once I get settled in, I plan on sort of reinventing my Substack presence, Maybe even adding a daily show of some kind, and because I do feel a bit at a loss. It's like I do reports on. It's like the good news is a lot of people are seeing it. Like a lot of people are seeing it, but the two-party divide is so thick, and the herd-like quality is so strong. It's still like it's I don't know. It's a good question.
Yeah.
I just did my last report on Trump and arresting people and sending them away for criticizing Israel.
Hmm.
It's like that's the best. That was the best I could come up with. Was like I thought it was important. Yeah, does everyone talking about it? Sure. Um, but what else is more important than that? That's pretty important, and it's crazy because that is in real time taking away the First Amendment. You
Yep.
cannot argue that that's happening, and they're doing it with no protest.
Yeah.
Nobody is protesting it, not the left or the right. And I understand why. It's because everyone's been so beaten down into compliance over the past several years from COVID. People are genuinely afraid to protest right now, and they're not going to do it. And so it's just crazy watching it happen. And people are just bitching about it, sharing memes and saying, "I told you so. I told you so." That's people have resigned to fighting each other.
Yeah.
That's what really kind of breaks my heart. Is not only did I set the bar way high before COVID, but I did not realize how like they don't even have to divide us. We divide ourselves.
Yeah.
We're like we'll do that for you. Don't worry about it. We're not going to take on the governments, but we will fight each other.
Yeah.
So it's like I don't want to fight anyone. I might want to hide away from everyone and not be seen and just see my neighbors as little as possible. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to fight anyone.
I'm sort of in the same boat where like, I don't want to have differences with the people that aren't the problem. I don't see like the average person. I see these like authoritarian people that are trying to abuse their power, and it's like we should all be like why aren't you in agreement with this? Don't you want to be left the hell alone? Don't you want to stop like having your time and like wealth devalued by these
Yeah.
people constantly, and like just
What do they mean by the eyes on the prize?
yeah.
There's a lot of truth in that saying. That's what that means. You gotta focus on what it is that you want to see, and not. I mean, because really, that is the whole point of controlled opposition is to keep people fighting each other and keep people spinning around in circles, and it works like a charm. And like
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Like people just love doing. I think people have just settled for it. I think it happened. Unfortunately, I think it happened. January 6th, and then the Canadian trucker. The old woman getting trampled by the horse and stuff like that. That was enough for it seems like all of North America to be like, all right, fine, you win,
Yeah.
you know, and we won't admit that. No one wants to admit that, so that's why everyone wants to fight each other because that at least distracts them from having to admit the fact that we've failed.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. I'll admit, like I think I get wrapped up in the like arguing with controlled ops sometimes, because I one of my biggest pet peeves, and always has been like through my whole life, is I can't stand when people lie.
yeah,
And it just
I mean, I agree.
pisses me off so much, because I'm like, especially once you start getting into these, people with like a high level of influence, even if they're not in the government, like people with like millions and millions of followers or whatever that looks like, and I see something and I'm like, that's a lie. And I feel compelled to, even in the moment, like I know I should probably be a little more professional and stuff, but I just can't help it. I'm like, that's bullshit.
Well, I think that's good to call bullshit. I mean, you got to call bullshit, and it's hard for people to know these days. And like I said, a lot of these people, like I think it's like I've rubbed elbows with some of these people, and I
Yeah.
think some of them were MK Ultra from childhood, and don't really, and they don't really know a lot. They're useful idiots.
Yeah.
Some of them might be in the know, but they're still useful idiots. They're soldiers and they're tools. That's a few of them. I think there are a few like that, but I think they're few and far between. I think the majority of them are just your average degenerate, savage human that hasn't gotten to the level of spiritual enlightenment yet, where they understand that it's not nice to prey off of your other humans.
Yeah.
They just realize that, oh, I can get money, I can get some attention, I can get some fame, I can get some power. Count me in.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them are just that level, and that's all they understand. That much they understand enough. And I think I started seeing some of these people early on in like 2016, and I remember being impressed actually with them back then because I'm like there's not really clear evidence that they're on the winning side right now, and yet their instincts are still telling them their grifter instincts are telling them that this is the right side, and that was impressive to me back in 2016, because in 2016, you could easily argue that that movement was going nowhere. It was a hopeless thing that would, at least I felt that way. I didn't predict things would happen at the way they did. I really only predicted that. I saw that during Biden. Like I said, once they started pulling out the rubber masks, I was like, all right, they're doing this on purpose. This is obviously leading to a crazy era. Trump's talking about running a third time. And every time he says one of these things, I guarantee you that means it's happening.
Yeah.
It's not trolling.
Yeah, I
It's
remember.
just so interesting how they're doing it so nonchalantly. Canada, Greenland. I think I'll run for the third time.
Yeah, and throwing out these things where I remember he was giving a speech one time, and even in the same speech, he had at one point, it might have been a slip of the tongue, but he was like, "I'm not a Christian," but he said, you won't have to vote anymore after this," and I was like, that tells me that either he's going to do like the FDR thing where he ends up, having terms up until he can't be useful anymore, or we're gonna get in some sort of AI governance or something like that.
I agree with you. The only way it would work for him is if he does like save the economy, save the world. Like I said, that's why I kind of think that'll happen, is because I think they will give him that. I think they will give him the golden statues and the Trump towers in Gaza, and Trump coin will live on as a priceless like memorabilia of all this.
Yeah.
And but then again, I've never been able to guess their next move. And so the fact that I all of a sudden think I got it, and normally I even avoid trying, and the fact that I think I know what's happening is probably enough evidence actually for me to back up and be like, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
I do kind of think that they're disgracing the Republican Party. They certainly are already. I don't see how they can. The only way I can see them pulling out of it is through greed, like making everyone kind of, happy with the money, because that seems to go far with the masses, and wrapping up all the violence in the Middle East, by any means necessary, and calling it world peace. I do think that if they did that, they could pull out of this, and everyone would be like, it's awesome. But short of that, I don't see how they're turning this around. And it does seem like the answer would then be like AI politicians. Oh, politicians suck. Everyone hates politicians. All they do is lie. And AI, we can program to just do whatever and who needs politicians anyways when it's an AI government?
Yeah.
We're definitely going into the AI system. I think the only thing that I think the big game changer for me would be, what does that involve as far as the interface with that system? Like, because I've already gone through this. I've been thinking about this since the early 2000 or mid 2000s. Like, what am I going to do? And I think if it's a facial recognition, I might grin and bear it, and continue doing business. But if it's some type of like humiliation ritual where you got to take a chip, mark of the beast kind of thing, then I don't think I think I'll migrate with the rest on the Exodus. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think that's part of the psychological operation. I think that's like Noah Harari talking about hackable animals, and you will eat the bugs. You're going to get a mark of the beast. These are all red herrings that are put out there on purpose to get everyone worked up into a frenzy, so that when they introduce the actual system, even though it's basically the exact same thing, it's just these little minor details aren't as bad. And it's interesting because that would work with me. Like I'm admitting right now, I think that would work with me. That's where I would draw the line.
Yeah.
Oh, I just got to stand. They already have my facial recognition data. When I came back recently from Russia, they had a sign that said, we already have your data, but you don't have to submit to the scan right now. You can just hand us your ID.
Okay. Yeah, that's
and it's interesting. It's like, but I've already thought about it. Am I going to suicide myself? Am I going to like die, even though you won't be a martyr? You'll be a terrorist. You'll die a terrorist, guaranteed, the way things are going right now. And society will celebrate your death. And but for some people, that'll be the choice. For some people, they'll say that's what I have to do. I don't think I'm there. I don't think I'm that person. So unless, but like I said, if it is a humiliation ritual, if it is like, take your chip, then I'll join the Exodus and live off of, whatever little means we can find in the.
Yeah, I've heard, especially in like older texts and stuff, that the people that don't end up going along with whatever that that change ends up being, or like the eventual society that we have, that they're going to be like relegated to shanty towns, and they're going to be considered like outsiders in this like lower class and stuff. And I'm like, dude, sign me up. I'll
Yeah, I mean
go.
that sounds fun actually. The book 1984 had that. Like
Yeah,
everyone talks about how bad it was in the city, but not many people talk about that outside of the city. There's just a regular life going on, you know.
yeah,
And it was probably pretty cool too, because it looked like, according to the book 1984, it was almost like the Wild Wild West, you know, which I'm kind of okay with, you know.
yeah. I fantasize sometimes about like, man, if I could have just lived in the 1800s, I think things would have been so cool. I mean, I probably would
Yeah,
have died at some by like a bear or you know, some sort of disease, but I just feel like it was a nicer time, like
I do
simpler
think it will
time. And
be. Personally, I think that the nanotech will be, unless we're all infected with it, which I think about a lot. I don't like thinking about that, but unless that's the case, I kind of suspect it might be voluntary. And if it is voluntary, that would also suggest that it's beneficial in some ways.
mhm.
You know, might give people superpowers of kinds and stuff like that. I wouldn't be surprised to see that either. And but I don't have, you know, I don't have many friends and a family, and I don't. No one's depending on me. I've already achieved enough good in this life. I think I could die in peace. So I'm not going to be transhumanizing myself.
Yeah. Well, I'll
I
be
hope I'm
there in
not
the
already.
I'll be in there in the human zones. I think Nicole Shanahan called them,
Yeah,
with you. So
yeah.
we'll be in good company, I think.
Probably need to burrow underground pretty deep, I think,
Yeah.
to get away from the lidar, and we'll definitely need like a drone perimeter and be able. But you know, what else are you gonna do?
Yeah.
You gotta find something to do for with your days.
Um, so and I hate to press you on like making a prediction, you know, because there's always, you know, none of us know really what's going on, I think, and you know, all of the interoperating weaving up stuff that's being built, and the collusion between people. Where do you see us in like 5 years from now?
Yeah, yeah. I'll add my caveat saying I have no idea,
Yeah.
but in 5 years, I think because I that is an area of research that I'm very curious about, and so I have spent much time looking into that through what remote viewers are seeing, what astrologers are seeing, what you know people, a lot of people that have near-death experiences, which is interesting. They just published some article saying that they've scientifically proven that that's a real thing. Something like, I don't know, alien, all these things. If you factor in all these kind of things, it's a great question. It's a great question. Uh, I used to think the idea of a split was stupid.
Hmm.
Um, but the more I research, the more that keeps coming up that there is going to be some type of event where there is some kind of split, where like maybe those I hate even saying it. It's the story you hear from the people that knock on your doors for the Watchtower magazine, whatever like that.
Jehovah's
Yeah,
Witnesses.
Jehovah's Witnesses. It's basically their story that you know, we're going to get to a point where all of a sudden, those of us that want to be natural humans and take care of the land and love each other and respect each other, we wake up and all of a sudden it's just us, you know, and
Hmm.
all these predators and these animals and these crazy people are gone, you know. And then maybe the people that are content with just being the human animal and preying off of others are going to be in their own little reality, stuff like that. I used to think that was the dumbest thing, and but it really does come up quite a bit in almost every like myth and stuff like that. And get into the idea of the shift once again, like the shift of the ages. What does that entail? But I wouldn't predict that because it just seems a little too hard to even wrap my mind around. But what I do predict is I would predict that in 5 years from now, we are probably going to be unrecognizable from the world we're in now. I think we will be in digital AI world. And I think that I think there's a level of technology that's been around probably for thousands of years, if not longer. It's just being, you know, rolled out for whatever reason on a schedule on Earth. I'm sure there's a reason for it. I just don't have enough information.
Hmm.
And this is all a way of transitioning everything into that. So we're living through the real nasty bit right now. We're living through the part where a generation is being sacrificed through depopulation, through transgenderism, through castration, stuff like that. We're living through really the most brutal, ugly part of it. And I think that honestly, I hate to say it, but I do think there's a lot more depopulation coming. I think there's something to be said about external 5G and external frequencies being able to trigger what's already been put into billions of people. It's in the patents.
Yep.
It's one of the scariest reports you could do, but because it's all in the patents that that's what they could do is they could trigger external frequencies, open these tiny little microcapsules and release like Ebola.
Yeah.
And it would make sense because then they could have a real Ebola outbreak and say we got to shut things down, we got to do this and that. And if you try saying, no, it's 5G, it's just triggering the no one's going to want to hear that,
Right.
And but anyways, I do think in 5 years things will be. If you can get through the next 5 years, uh, if they don't force the chip on anyone, I don't personally. I'm not of the mind that it's all going to be hell. It's all going to be shit. In fact, the way I see it working is I think they're going to have to please enough people to where those who cry conspiracies are going to be really looked at like how we used to be,
Yeah.
maybe even worse. Because it's like once people are going through all this, they're not going to want to hear about it. That's what I think.
Yeah, I largely I agree. Like when when you look at like the Internet of Bodies and like W-band and stuff like that, it seems like it's this sort of slow creep to where there's it's like a fail-safe almost, where it's like, anyone anywhere in the world, not only are we spying on you through Palantir, but we'll be able to, beam a satellite down on your head and you'll, end up with some sort of like EMF frequency. I've noticed that, especially looking at like Larry Ellison mentioning the mRNA cancer vaccine.
Yeah.
I think that we're, especially seeing like the rise of cancer reports and stuff that I'm seeing come out from various places. I think that may end up being like the next epidemic sort of thing. And we have
Well, you don't even need an epidemic with that.
yeah.
You can just quietly kill people on a one-on-one basis because it's like, I mean, that was so chilling that was day one. That wasn't that day one of the inauguration. That was the actual day of the inauguration. I think was that announcement that, hey, we got this new technology where you don't even have to be sick. You can just come into your doctor, we'll scan you, and AI will tell you what you're going to die of, and then we can make a personal vaccine for you.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
no.
mean,
While Trump was passing like all those executive orders, I was looking at some of the bills coming through Congress, and they have like AI being able to be certified as like a physician, and like replace doctors. And you have that lady that's being nominated to the CDC director role. She came from ARPA, and they're talking about gene sequencing every single person on Earth so that they can, hack your genetics and make you, they claim to be, cure all your diseases or your genetic
right.
defuncts and stuff. And it's like, man, I don't know. I just kind of
I don't
want to be
believe
left
it.
alone.
Oh yeah, well, I think maybe you'll be able to be left alone. I think die of natural old age, maybe. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for. But I mean, I'll go out in a blaze of glory if we. It'd be fun if we could all do it together. It's
Yeah.
kind of like even when I was really rooting for the worldwide awakening, it still seemed like a hopeless, effort. Because when, like I said, I think this is an ancient place. It's running the way it should. And when you like, maybe the Tower of Babel story was describing that. Like people were like, what's going on? And you get to a certain point and they, rug pull you. But I still thought that would be awesome.
Yeah.
That would still be fun. I thought. Um, but yeah, and then I mean, that's the worst case scenario is like that they start, just giving everyone personal vaccines but then it makes me wonder, like, it almost seems like the depopulation is focused on killing off the compliant.
Mhm.
Um, I don't think these people make stupid mistakes. We're not dealing with like Nancy Pelosi's or Schumer's. Those are retarded idiots
Yeah.
that are dumb enough and degenerate enough that they're unfortunately waggled out in front of the public.
Yeah.
The ones we're dealing with, I think, have this all very well thought out. I think they've probably been doing it for so long. They have books on this, how to herd humans and all this stuff. And like I said, I don't have enough information, so I don't know what their goal is. I don't know what they consider to be the best stock. But I would imagine that's a big part of what they're doing is they're trying to trim the herd down to get their best stock. And it does almost seem like they prefer those of us that aren't so compliant. That
Yeah.
kind of does seem like that's the effect.
Yeah.
The effect seems to be that they're depopulating more of the people that are just going along to get along.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, especially looking at like the COVID vaccines, it's the
Mhm.
people, well, I'm, 3 times boosted and stuff, and it's like, well, best of luck to you, I guess. I don't, tried to
Yeah,
warn you.
right.
Um, and it's almost it seems like a systemic, like you said, a culling or depopulation, and I don't know if what they're like sort of basing things on, like are they so far advanced that maybe they have these profiles and they're able to predict like the types of people that would end up going along with
Yeah,
these
sure they
things, or
do.
you know?
That could also be explained by my pole shift theory, because that if we were headed into this era, a major shift where massive loss of life happens from some type of geophysical event, which is what we're talking about here, there would also be a massive period of rebuilding. You could even say you would need at least an entire generation, if not more, to rebuild after such an event like that. And so that would be what this that I mean that kind of would be what this looks like, like getting rid of the old and the sick and the compliant, because the compliant are going to be of the weaker mindset. They're not going to, those of us that are questioning things and actually have a mind that we're questioning things and critically thinking, this is what you'd want if you wanted to maximize human innovation, um, building the future and building things out in the future. Because that does seem to be like a big part of what's happening here is they introduce a little bit of technology to us and then they let us do our magic with it,
Yeah.
because we're not all like, yeah, we're all a little bit retarded, but some of us are capable. I think you could even say that all of us are capable of allowing the creator to channel through them like like playing us like an instrument, and manifest some incredible brilliant thing into this physical realm. I think we're all have the potential for that to happen. And you see it happen throughout time.
Yeah, I kind of agree that like when I say things of like, selfless acts of generosity and just general compassion, even if it's like against your own best interest, sometimes that
Yeah.
there seems to be this like driving force that compels us to do these things. And I don't know if some people just like completely block that off, and that's why they end up becoming like evil and corrupt and driven for power and things like that. But I do definitely think that there's something there that's connecting all of us, and you can tell who has it. I think sometimes just even by like interacting or the stuff that they put out in the world,
Yeah, you can
and
usually tell, like in real life. That's one of the unfortunate things about the interweb. And I mean, I love the internet. The internet's actually been great. But one of the unfortunate things is a lot of us have forgotten like real life stuff. But in real life, I think you can tell right away. Like, you can just get a vibe from a
yeah.
person. You can see if they're full of shit. And just because they're full of shit doesn't mean they're a bad person. You realize that like, people have their different reasons for being full of shit. Full of shit just means, well, they're full of shit. So,
Yeah.
you just don't, don't take them that seriously.
Yeah, but they're a hard worker, like one of those kind of things, like pros and cons. So as far as I've just sort of experienced, because I'm still kind of still relatively new to the reporting investigative scene and stuff like that, but it seems like it's sort of 50-50 of people who are able to like use their discernment and critical thinking and stuff and can see the big picture and everything for sort of what it is, this like system that we have. And then the other 50% just seem to just block it all out. And I've noticed that discernment seems to be like this skill set that's slowly going away. Do you feel like in the global population that people's ability to think critically is gone or going away, or do you think that it's sort of just like a case by case basis, or
I think it's just a case by case basis. And if the numbers are 50-50, that actually makes me feel great. Like I wouldn't guess. That's very optimistic, I think. It's extremely optimistic. Um, but yeah, there are like, for example, I um I was listening to a podcast once and I heard the guys that they were saying like, do you think there are people out there that don't have an inner dialogue? And something about that question is just really kind of struck me because
Mhm.
I was like, it's just an interesting way of putting it, I think, because I was born with an inner dialogue. Like that's kind of the part of my personal relationship to this creator I'm talking about, is talking to this creator, um, that, and then there's also the inner dialogue itself, which is like a part of the human ego mind and stuff like that, and makes you always question things. And I once I heard it put that way, I was like, you know what? I grew up with a lot of people like that. I guarantee you, these people I know very intimately don't have, and that's why I was often looked at as being a crazy person growing up, because I did always question things, and that was not something that people accepted as being normal. It seemed like we're in the environment that I grew up in, it was abnormal to question things, and it was even triggering. It would upset people. The simplest things, just when questioning anything about the official story would. And so, and then I started thinking like NPCs. Maybe there really are NPCs. Maybe when you really get into the occult lineages of spirituality and all that stuff, you'll find things about like the monad, and there's a seed of a soul. We're born with the seed of a soul, but we don't have a soul unless we cultivate that soul. And then it gets into the idea of multiple lifetimes and all this weird stuff. And but yeah, I don't think I'm going to resign to the answer. That's a long answer for your question, but I'm going to go fall back on the yin yang, and the yin yang is 50-50. So maybe you're right. Maybe it really is 50-50. That is exciting. But I do think it's just a natural thing. I think that's part of whatever this place is. Whatever this place is, it seems like there are people that are part of this herd, and that legitimately are probably owned by these farmers and have to be looked after, or else they'll fall off a cliff.
Yeah.
And then there are those who see that and don't identify as a member of the herd, and think, they're. So I don't think it's changing. If anything, I would say I think we're getting more of it, but I don't think we're getting more of it. If you were to say, like, in maybe 2021, 2022, maybe in 2022, it was almost like we had this brief moment where all the tinfoil hat people, lunatics like me, where all of a sudden we're like, you know what, we're going to get some respect. We're
Yeah.
going to get a little respect, and we're going to get some friends, and everyone's going to be on page with us. But that only lasted a few months. Now we're all lunatics again, and it's all about the trannies. Oh, we're trying to get rid of these trannies.
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Cashless society. That's crazy talk.
Yeah. Yeah, especially bringing up the term black pill, which seems to just be like a reinvention of the conspiracy theory, like slur, I guess. I don't, for
Yeah,
lack
that's
of a
all it
better
is, and it's
term.
retarded too, because the red pill that they're referring to the Matrix, obviously, and the red pill is something you take and then you realize that you were born a slave and you've always been a slave and your entire life is a lie. That's the red pill.
Yeah.
Nothing's changed.
Yeah.
you know, did all of a sudden someone change the definition of red pill to meaning like, oh, Trump and Elon are going to save the day and all we got to do is sit around and cheer?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
uh, it's very telling though. It does tell you that people are, as long as you keep people just comfortable enough, they will never rock the boat, and they'll go along with anything. That's the game. And the ones that are running the place, they seem to know how to play that game very well, how to avoid insurrections, how to avoid, they like to piss us off. They want to piss us off enough to where we fight each other and chase things around, but they can't piss us off too much. And so it seems like as long as they can maintain that, then um, what's the prediction? The prediction is whatever they want, wherever they want to take us is where they'll take us.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you have like boil the frog and things like that. I sort of see it as like this push pull, going back to like the duality, the laws of duality of like the universe and stuff. They'll push us like not to our backs against the wall, but like 1 inch away from the wall, just to remind, I guess like the general population, like, hey, we can lock down the country, and we can, inject a bunch of people, and we can do all these totalitarian things, and then pull us right back, and then here's some hope, here's some,
Yeah,
things you want to hear, and stuff. And it seems like it's just this roller coaster, and I'm resigned to the belief that once you get off the roller coaster, life can be good, because then you're finally able to fully be in control, and you can
I
see
agree.
past all of it.
I would agree, and I would even go as far as to say that I think, for example, like it's important to remember that the reality, what we call reality, even what we call physical reality, is really not solid at all. It really literally is vibrations. It really is a matrix. This idea of solidity seems to have to do more with like repulsion, magnetic repulsion between electrons and um, limiting frequencies that we have in our human body or whatever. But I honestly think that like we have the power to change our reality to certain degrees based on our actions. Like you can get off the roller coaster ride, you can unplug, you can focus on making your life as good as you can make it. Focus on like trying to be accountable for yourself, trying to be as independent on yourself as much as possible. Uh, and by doing that, I think that there's I mean, I can't, obviously, I can't prove this, but it does seem like from my own experience, I've been able to change my experience. Like, there was a time in my life when I was surrounded by monsters and danger and trouble. And by changing my life and changing my actions, that's not my environment anymore. My
Yeah.
environment has become kind of chill and cool and nice. And I find I run into cool people and no drama. And I think there's something to that. I don't think it's simply explained away in some gross level way. I think there's an energy level there too. And that goes back to what I'm saying about the future. I think if you really do, because really the answer has always been really take care of yourselves and take care
Yeah.
of each other. That's it. The idea of demanding government to take care of you better is just as bad as anything else. That's
Yeah.
being a slave. So the only solution really is to stop being a slave, stop being dependent on a system, becomes independent, take care of yourself. If you can fetch your own water and grow your own food, even better, and then learn how to take care of each other. And that's still the answer. And I think that by doing that, there is still the possibility of finding yourself in an environment that is suitable for that. However, that is, whether it's living out in these little outskirts like that we can imagine from our reality now, or maybe an actual split. I wouldn't, like I said, when you look at how going back to the cellular level, which is almost as small as you can get, cells do that, they'll just split into
Yep.
two. So it's not the most outrageous thing in the world to imagine this egg that we're in splitting into two things.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And just to your point about like being able to manifest your reality from, just it almost seems like acting intentionally. Like you have to want to do it and that
Yeah.
consistency. Like
Can't just say it and be full of shit.
yeah.
I didn't understand what that word intent meant for many years. I used to get really pissed off by that word. Like, what does that mean? And I think it's soaked in. It's just that you can't, because we can lie to ourselves too. You can be full of shit with yourself, and you have to learn to, like you said, your actions. Your actions have to match what you're claiming your intent is, and then through that practice, you could argue that that's magic in this realm, and that by doing that, you can actually create your own reality.
Yeah. Yeah, I used to when I was younger, I worked at like this sales place. It was like it ended up being a multi-level marketing scam. I was young, dumb, thought I could make some money. And they all talked about like you can manifest your reality, speak it into existence. If you believe it, you'll achieve it, and all this stuff. And I was like, that's stupid. And then now, as I've sort of stepped away from, I made tons of mistakes through my 20s. I dabbled in like drugs and got wrapped up with some people that weren't so great. And then eventually I just like hit this point where I was like, I don't want this for my life anymore, like this uncertainty and like always trying to chase the next thing and stuff. So I just ended up cutting basically everything out of my life, and I just kind of keep to myself. I have a better half. Me and her just kind of focus on our little bubble and stuff, and I'm at peace, and it's like one of those things that I never really felt before now, and it's zen,
That's great to hear. Yeah, I couldn't agree. I mean, that's really what it's all about. You know,
Yeah.
I really do believe that. And the opposite of that is being either like the victim who blames other people for not being able to do any. I have no power, and or the predatory. Just wanting to feed off of others. Those are the two alternatives to just walking the walk and
Yeah.
being and trying to become the thing that it's very cliche, but it's absolutely true. Like you want the world to be a better place, and just become that and focus on that. And it's not really that hard, actually. You mentioned how the place that we live, what a miracle it is. It really is. Like, I practiced, meditation. I'm a big fan of meditation. I'm a big fan of um, other physical practices to help put yourself in a Zen state of mind. And I've studied just about all of them, but nothing beats nature. Nothing
Yeah.
beats just taking the time to go for a walk in nature. And it's really just that simple. If you can take your shoes off, even better, but you don't even have to do that. Just be out there and
Yeah.
just be there and chill with it. And just really a few minutes a day of doing that's really all you need. It's like you're literally recharging yourself.
Yeah.
It's
It's
all there. Like everything we want is here.
yeah. Yeah. It's great because, I used to, be a huge like tech guy, and I'd be like the virtual reality is awesome and video games are cool, and like inundate myself in that. And I always found myself like not getting fulfillment out of it. And now I'll just like go outside, sit out in the sun, like look up and be like, wow. And I feel better. Like I'm getting something that I wasn't able to get in like this metaphysical space, and then just going out in nature and observing, and like you said, having like gratitude for the things that we have, and really seeing it for what it is, and humbling yourself. And you feel like you're a part of something bigger, even if you're just out there by yourself.
Yeah. And you can learn just about anything you need to know by observing nature. And it has its own perplexities. Like there's a lot of I have videos I like to watch on the internet of like different species of creatures. Like meeting each other and playing with each other and kissing each other and stuff like that. Gives you that sweet spot. But then I also have videos that I enjoy seeing that show animals killing each other and eating each other, and they're not fun to watch, but it's just nature. We live in a strange, wild place.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I know, I think you said, probably running out of time here, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind wrapping up soon. I
I
don't, I don't,
I got you. No
it's
worries,
fun
man.
talking, but
I'm used to doing like 4 hour long ass live streams and stuff, so I lose track of time. I just love to talk.
yeah, I can talk too for sure.
But Greg, I do want to thank you for your time, man. I'm excited to connect with you again. Anytime you want to chat, you're more than welcome back on here. Where places people can find you and your work?
But probably the best place to go is Substack. You can go to my Substack. I don't know the exact URL, but Greg Reese Report on Substack. If you go to reesereport.com, that has the link to my Substack. It also has my link to my video channels. Substack's where you can go to get my podcast, my videos, and I got videos behind the paywall to thank you for your support. Because if it wasn't for the support I have on Substack, I wouldn't have been able to walk away from a pretty good paying job and feel better about myself. And I'm really grateful I was able to do that. And I'm also very grateful I'm able to sort of, make this move right now and figure out exactly, what my course correction is going to be. So yeah, go to my Substack and check it out there. I got some videos behind the paywall on subjects that I think are fascinating. Some of the most interesting videos I think I've made, but they don't seem to be crucial. Like I said, I don't necessarily think they're important, but like, videos on the alien phenomenon and the baby farms from the 1800s, which I have absolutely no answers on, but it's one of the most interesting one of the most interesting stories I've ever seen, especially recently. Uh, Bigfoot, I just did a 30-minute Bigfoot video.
Nice.
That was my most recent one of my favorite subjects.
I actually have a little like 2 foot Bigfoot statue like 5 feet away
Right
from me.
on.
Yeah.
What part of the country do you live in, if you don't mind me asking?
The southeast.
Southeast. All right. Florida's actually the second biggest Bigfoot spot in the North America, which actually
Really?
surprised me. Pacific Northwest is number one.
Yeah.
I think Florida's number two. I'm in Ohio area, which is high up on the number three. So I got a Bigfoot air freshener.
Oh,
And
nice.
you see Bigfoots everywhere here. Like Bigfoot's a real deal.
Yeah.
It's really, I got into Bigfoot thinking it was a joke, and I just thought it would be a fun, relaxing way to like get away from the news. And then within my first night of research, I was like, oh no, this is a whole new can of worms now. Like it really, we live in a very wild place, man.
Oh yeah. I mean, just seeing everything that I've looked into and experienced for myself, like anything's possible.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Awesome. Well, Greg, thank you so much for your time again, man. Really, really appreciate it. Anytime you want to be back, feel free to reach out. I'll probably reach out to you at some point in the future. And thanks for your time again, man.
Yeah, thank you. It was fun talking.